In the thick, suffocating heat of Memphis, Tennessee in 1937, a child was born into a world that didn't want him. Not because of who he was, but because of the color of his skin. His name was Morgan Freeman, and from the very first breath he took, life made sure he understood one thing: nothing would come easy. Jim Crow's shadow stretched across the South like a noose. Segregation wasn't just a law, it was a way of life. It was drinking from separate fountains. It was sitting in the back of the bus. It was being told every single day that you were less than human. Morgan's father was a barber, his mother a teacher. But in the Jim Crow South, even that wasn't enough. Dreams didn't put food on the table. Hope didn't pay the rent. And so, like thousands of other black families fleeing the suffocating grip of Southern racism, they made the agonizing decision to leave. They packed their lives into worn suitcases and headed north to Chicago, chasing the promise of work, of dignity, of survival. But they left something behind. Someone behind. Baby Morgan. He was just an infant when his grandmother took him in. Charleston, Mississippi. A tiny town where cotton grew taller than hope. Where poverty wrapped around you like kudzu, choking out everything else. His grandmother's hands were weathered, calloused from years of hard labor. But they were gentle when they held him. She became his world, his anchor, the only constant in a childhood defined by absence. But even that wouldn't last. When Morgan was 6 years old, his grandmother died. Just like that, his anchor was gone, cut loose, adrift. He was sent north to Chicago to join his parents, to a family he barely knew, to a city that felt nothing like home. Chicago's South Side in the 1940s wasn't the promised land his parents had hoped for. It was a war zone. Gangs ruled the streets. Knives flashed in the dark. Ice picks, baseball bats. Violence was the language everyone spoke. Morgan was terrified. Every single day. "I hated it," he would later confess. The words barely captured the bone-deep fear. The way his heart hammered in his chest every morning. The way he ran to school and ran home, never stopping, never looking back, always knowing that if he slowed down, something bad would happen. His parents' marriage crumbled under the weight of their struggles. His father, drowning in alcohol and disappointment, couldn't hold the family together. The man who once cut hair with steady hands now couldn't even steady his own life. In 1961, cirrhosis would claim him, the disease of despair. Morgan was just 24. But before that, there was more moving, more uprooting. Mississippi again, then Indiana, then back to Mississippi. The Freeman family couldn't find solid ground anywhere. They were nomads in their own country, always searching for a place where they could just breathe. But in the chaos, something unexpected happened, something beautiful. School became Morgan's sanctuary. In those classrooms, nobody could hurt him. In those moments on stage, he wasn't just a scared black kid in a racist country. He was anyone he wanted to be. He was free. At 12 years old, Morgan got in trouble. He pulled a chair out from under a girl he had a crush on. Stupid kid stuff. But the punishment changed his life. His teacher made him compete in the school drama competition. He stepped onto that stage and everything clicked into place, like a key turning in a lock, like coming home after years of wandering. He won the competition, but more than that, he found himself. "I knew by age 13 that I was an actor," he would later say, "and that's what I wanted to be." But wanting and having are two different things, especially when you're black in 1950s America. The roles weren't there, the opportunities weren't there, the doors were locked, and nobody was handing out keys. Morgan had another dream too. He wanted to fly. Not metaphorically, literally. He wanted to be a fighter pilot, soaring above all the ugliness, all the hatred, all the limitations that kept trying to pin him down. So, in 1955, right after high school, he turned down a drama scholarship. He joined the United States Air Force. This was it. This was his ticket to the sky. But the Air Force had other plans for the young black man from Mississippi. They didn't put him in a cockpit. They put him on the ground. Mechanic, radar technician, the military assignments that black servicemen knew all too well. He scored high on every test. His aptitude was clear, but his skin was darker than his scores, and in 1955, that still mattered more. Years later, Morgan would look back on that time and recognize the quiet, insidious racism that shaped his service. Not the burning crosses and lynch mobs of the South, but the bureaucratic kind, the kind that smiled at you while closing every door. He spent 4 years in that uniform, watching planes take off without him. And somewhere in those 4 years, he had an epiphany, a painful, clarifying moment of truth. I had this very clear realization, he would remember. You are not in love with this. You are in love with the idea of this. More than that, he realized something else. He didn't want to shoot people down. He didn't want to kill. He wanted to create, to tell stories, to act. In 1959, Morgan left the Air Force and moved to Los Angeles. He was 22 years old. He had $60 in his pocket and a dream that weighed heavier than mountains. Hollywood wasn't ready for him. Hollywood wasn't ready for any black actor who wanted more than to play servants and stereotypes. He took acting classes. He auditioned. He got rejected. He auditioned again. He got rejected again. He worked day jobs that barely paid the bills. Typing clerk, dancer, whatever kept him alive long enough to try one more time. He moved to New York. More auditions, more rejections, more struggle. The 1960s rolled on. Civil rights marches filled the streets. Cities burned. Dr. King preached. Malcolm X spoke truth to power. Black Americans demanded the dignity they'd been denied for centuries. And Morgan Freeman kept auditioning. In 1967, he got his first break, an off-Broadway play called The Nigger Lovers. The title itself was provocative, confrontational. It was about the Freedom Riders, those brave souls who rode buses into the heart of Southern racism to challenge segregation. Morgan was 30 years old. It had taken him 8 years of grinding, soul-crushing rejection to get here. But he was finally on stage, professionally, getting paid to do what he loved. Success didn't come overnight. Even after his Broadway debut in Hello, Dolly in 1968, Morgan spent years hustling. The 1970s brought The Electric Company, a PBS kids show where he played characters like Easy Reader and Dracula. It paid the bills. It gave him exposure, but it wasn't the respect he craved. It wasn't the serious roles he deserved. He was raising 2 children. He needed steady income. So he swallowed his pride and took a role on a soap opera. It hurt his artistic soul, but it kept his family fed. This is what Hollywood did to black actors. It made them choose between dignity and survival. But Morgan never stopped believing, never stopped pushing, never stopped showing up. The late 1970s and 1980s brought theater roles, Obie Awards for his off-Broadway work, small film parts. Respect was building, slowly, painfully slowly, like water wearing down stone. Then came 1987, Street Smart, a crime thriller where Morgan played a pimp named Fast Black. The performance was electric, dangerous, real. Critics finally noticed. Oscar nomination. The world was waking up to what those who knew him had known all along. He was special. Driving Miss Daisy in 1989, Glory that same year, The Shawshank Redemption in 1994. Role after role, Morgan Freeman was rewriting what it meant to be a black actor in Hollywood. He wasn't playing stereotypes. He was playing humans. Complex, flawed, beautiful humans. But life has a way of reminding you that success doesn't immunize you from pain. In 2005, Morgan finally won the Oscar that everyone agreed was long overdue. Best Supporting Actor for Million Dollar Baby. He was 67 years old. He'd been acting professionally for 38 years. The validation felt good, but it couldn't protect him from what was coming. 3 years later, on a quiet Mississippi night in August 2008, Morgan was driving when everything went dark. He blacked out behind the wheel. Later, doctors would discover he had an irregular heartbeat, an arrhythmia that made him lose consciousness. The car he was driving flipped over, multiple times. Metal twisted, glass shattered. Emergency crews had to cut him out with the jaws of life. He joked with the rescuers as they worked. "No freebies, no freebies," he said when someone tried to take a photo. That was Morgan. Even in the worst moments, finding humor, finding grace. But the damage was severe. Broken arm, broken shoulder, broken elbow, surgery to reconnect nerves, days in the hospital, months of recovery. Except he never fully recovered. The nerves in his left hand never healed right. They stretched but wouldn't function. His fingers wouldn't move the way they used to. Blood didn't flow properly. The hand began to swell if he didn't wear a compression glove. Then came the fibromyalgia, chronic, excruciating pain that shot up and down his arm in waves, the kind of pain that made him wince even when he tried to hide it. "It's excruciating," he would admit years later, the weight of those words carrying years of silent suffering. He had to give up sailing, his passion, his escape, the thing that made him feel free. The last time he tried to dock his boat, he couldn't do it. One hand wouldn't work. It was humiliating, heartbreaking. "I walked away from sailing," he said. And in those simple words, you could hear everything he lost that night in Mississippi. If that wasn't enough, 2015 brought a tragedy that no compression glove could help. No Oscar could ease. No success could soften. Edina Hines, Morgan's step-granddaughter, but he always called her his granddaughter, because that's what she was to him. He'd helped raise her, he'd watched her grow into a beautiful, talented young woman, an aspiring actress, a bright light. On August 16, 2015, her boyfriend stabbed her 25 times on a Manhattan street. She was 33 years old. Witnesses heard her final words, "Why are you doing this?" The man she loved, high on drugs and lost in psychosis, took her life in the most brutal way imaginable. Morgan released a statement. Professional, composed, the words you're supposed to say. The world will never know her artistry and talent and how much she had to offer. Her star will continue to shine bright in our hearts, thoughts, and prayers. But beneath those words was an ocean of grief that no statement could capture. A grandfather's broken heart. A man who'd survived poverty, racism, rejection, a near-fatal car crash, and chronic pain, now facing the kind of loss that breaks something inside you that never quite heals. Today, Morgan Freeman lives in Mississippi, the place where his story began, the place that tried to break him, the place he left behind only to come back to when he had the power to do so on his own terms. He owns the land his grandparents once lived on. He built a home there, a beautiful sanctuary. He co-founded a blues club in Clarksdale, a fine dining restaurant. He's giving back to the place that gave him his first breaths, even when that place didn't give him much else. People often ask him, with that patronizing curiosity, "How did you ever get out of Mississippi?" His answer is automatic now, tinged with the slightest edge. "I took the bus." But the real question, the one that matters, is different. Why did he come back? "I realized it's where I was happiest," he says. "It's where I belong." At 87 years old, Morgan Freeman carries his scars visibly now. The compression glove on his left hand, the lines etched deep in his face. The weight of decades spent proving himself in a world that didn't want to believe in him. But he also carries something else. A quiet dignity, a hard-won peace, the kind of grace that comes from surviving everything life throws at you and still choosing to create beauty. He's played presidents and prisoners. He's played God twice. He's voiced documentaries and narrated the struggles of humanity. His voice has become synonymous with wisdom, with authority, with truth. But before he was any of that, he was just a little black boy left behind in Mississippi, a boy who ran scared through Chicago streets, a boy who dreamed of flying but was kept on the ground, a young man who auditioned 1,000 times before anyone listened, a man who lost so much, survived so much, endured so much, and still rose, still created, still became one of the most respected actors of his generation. Morgan Freeman's story isn't just about Hollywood success. It's about resilience in the face of a system designed to crush you. It's about art as survival. It's about the price of being black in America, the doors that stayed locked, the dreams that had to be deferred, the pain that never fully goes away. But it's also about this. No matter how many times they tried to keep him down, he kept getting back up. No matter how many times they said no, he kept saying yes to himself. No matter how much it hurt, he kept moving forward. Because that's what Morgan Freeman has always done. He survived. And in surviving, he showed us all what true greatness looks like. Not the greatness of never falling down, but the greatness of getting back up every single time, no matter what. That's the story they don't tell you about Morgan Freeman. That's the story that matters.